Good morning. Nice of you guys to drop by.
What a piece of junk. What are you talking about?
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed.
Look, don't worry. Everything's gonna be fine. Trust me.
I don't know what all this trouble is about, but I'm sure it must be your fault. Don't get technical with me.
This bickering is pointless.
Don't everybody thank me at once.
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
I'm glad you're here to tell us these things.
How
could you even say that?
I got a bad feeling about this.
Well, come on. Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Would you get going, you pirate?
Get in there, you big furry-o! I don't care what you smell!
I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
If what you've told me is true, you will have gained my trust. I like the sound of that.
Get a shuttle ready.
I don't know. Fly casual.
Shuttle Tydirium. What is your cargo and destination?
Transmission commencing.
Everybody, thanks again for tuning into the Shuttle Tydirium podcast. I am your captain, Jim Chadwick, also known as Hey Chadwick on the various internet forums. I have sitting next to me my co-pilot, Baba Ganoush, sometimes called Phil. Hey, doing, Phil?
Hey, just to answer some of the questions we've been getting from our passengers, the blue milk that we're carrying in the ship's galley and serving, it is blue milk from Tatooine, and it is not Ewok milk that we've colored blue. Thank you.
Okay. We also have, probably serving you your blue milk, we have our protocol droid, J-Bot. How's it going?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. I'm really, really excited for the flight today.
Excellent. Yes, we have your contest winners to talk about. I'm pretty excited, too. I've not seen any of them, and I'm pretty eager.
Well,
Excellent.
That was done to prevent any kind of shenanigans involved in the contest.
Okay.
Fewer hands are involved in these ballots, the cleaner a vote is done.
All right. So hopefully it wasn't just you, but let's go ahead and kick off the captain's question. This one comes from a user, a listener, excuse me. It makes it sound like a druggie, but a glitter stim user. But no, a listener. And I was trying to find who it was. They posted on the Facebook page, but I just couldn't find it in the few minutes we were digging this up. They asked, what one ship do you regret buying? Or I'll even go with, if you're a completionist, regret flying. Like what ship is just kind of like, oh, this was a waste. So one of you guys want to go first?
I can. This is going to sound crazy because I absolutely love the ship. I love the fire spray. But I'm going to say I regret flying it. I don't so much regret buying it because I do love the fire spray. I have never kept one alive more than 4 turns, period. Like I love the ship. It's got some great like mods or upgrades you can put onto it, but I cannot keep the stupid thing alive. Every time I try and build a list around it, it seems to just be this giant focal point, and so it gets obliterated really early. So I either need to learn how to fly it better or just put it on a shelf and enjoy how well it looks, because otherwise.
That is one people say is not the highest power level. I have not flown it too much. I almost even forgot about it. Just to show how much
Yeah,
really
well, I'm old school. It's as some of the people at the shop know, I'm old school. I still use cardboard tokens, so it's I don't have any newfangled ships. Some of them I might be even more upset if I had purchased, but that one. Close second goes to the Brobot. I've got one of the Brobot ships, and I've flown it once, but I'm kind of meh on it. But the fire spray, I really, really, really want to be good, and I can't. It just makes me so mad that I can't fly it.
Yeah, I forgot about the robots as well. I don't think I've ever flown mine. Now I gotta think about it some more. All right, so Phil, we'll go to you while I reconsider.
I would say probably my Jumpmaster 5000s, although I don't really regret buying anything, and I can't honestly say I regret flying something, but It's definitely one of the newer ships that I've gotten that I just don't. I feel like I don't have any motivation to fly, probably because it's is doing so well in the meta. So for me, the better a ship is doing in the meta, and the less I feel motivated to fly it because I'm an idiot.
No, I totally knew too. So
it's a stupid pride thing, right? I mean, like, everyone else thinks this is good, so I won't use it. I'll use something else, and I'll show them.
I know how that goes.
Like, come on, it's kind of stupid. But
oh, that was me. Like, oh, what's one of the worst things in the game? Ordnance. I want to use ordnance.
Make it good.
Yeah, what's one of the worst ships? TIE bombers. Yeah. I'm gonna fly TIE bombers before any fix comes out for it, and I'm gonna make it good. Darn it. Yeah. That's me. Yeah. Take the worst thing and fly it, just cause.
Yeah, I'm kind of a contrarian too when it comes to that stuff. Oh, everybody likes Game of Thrones. Well, that show sucks. Like, I'm kind of the same. Like, oh, if you start telling me it's really, really good, unless I'm in on the ground floor, like, no, you guys it's overrated.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, I was gonna say for my choice, the YT-2400, the Outrider, because I hated the whole fat turret things. I hated the whole, fat dash. I hated the HLCs. I've only flown it twice. Yes, Super Dash. I've only flown it twice, and I put the Auto Blaster turret, the one that the only 2 dice and it automatically hits. It's only range 1. You can't evade it.
Right, yeah, the Auto Blaster, I believe.
Auto Blaster turret, yeah. And I flew it twice, and I totally just had no idea what I was doing. I got totally shot up really badly. So I was going to go with that, but I recently was thinking about someone was saying that there's the ARC 170 pilot. One of them is a really good one, and it's actually not bad to fly with Super Dash or Rainbow Dash, which I have to look up what Rainbow Dash is, but I'm actually going to try to fly.
That would be a My Little Pony.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to try it.
Talk to the expert.
Since you said the IG-88, I actually realized that I have never flown. I've got 2 of them, and it just wears one of those things. Oh, it's the super ship in the meta. Oh, it's so super awesome, and I was so sick of seeing them. I have never actually flown a single one of my IG-88s.
You haven't
flown
like the Falcon?
Either of them, just never, never in a list, ever. So it's like my Falcon and the IG-88. I've at least put the Falcon on the table for other friends who've borrowed, but I don't think anyone's even borrowed my IG-88s. They have never been flown before, so I'm kind of going to go with those 2. Or the IG-88s is my option.
Yeah, I saw so many of those IG-88, the Brobot combos when those first came out, that that was probably the reason I never played mine more than once, because I don't typically buy multiples of a ship unless I really, really like the ship. And so one by itself was fun, but everybody was playing 2. So I was like, you know what? I don't even want to take this one out of the package. So it's out of the package, but other than that, it's just been put on the peg once. And that was it. But
yeah,
I wasn't super disappointed with it. It was more back in my phase of buying every ship because I wanted every ship.
Yeah, and I was like, well, you got to have 2, for the whole Brobot package. So then it was just so powerful. I was like, no, I'm done with this. I'm thinking now if I had actually even just had 1 and then gotten like a bunch of Caraxes instead, I'd be happier. All right, cool. So that's Captain's question. Hopefully I didn't take up too much, not like our fast food question. But one thing I did want to talk about just as relatively, was it last episode, one before, I talked about a guy named Biff who does the Dagobah Dave Trench Run, who reached out to us and really revived the thread on the FFG forums. He does, at Gen Con, he does Dagobah Dave's, and he would use the original 2012 rules. Well, really got it.
He did update them for the one that he was running at Gen Con. Yeah.
So he was changing them, and Phil gets in, Phil with the master, mission planner, and he was giving all his input and his questions, and why is this like that? Why is that? And the thread's still there and it's active. And
I would say that I jumped in and complained that it wasn't perfectly thematic.
Right.
But I'm not exactly sure how constructive that was, but I did it anyway.
But we got a lot of traffic on it, and I don't even know if it was just a few of us actually commenting, but it bounced around a bit. It was actually a really good conversation, and Dagobah Dave actually jumped in, and he was inspired by all of our commentary, and he's actually revamping the rules, and he posted up kind of like this is what I have at the moment. What do you guys think? And I really like a lot of the changes. And a lot of the stuff that we put in, is actually going to be put into the new packet. I'd love to try it again. I don't know when, because we're supposed to be doing all these, epic games, and there's only so much game, play time. And but now I really want to run the trench run again. So I thought it was really cool. He was actually going to give us credits in the packet for helping him. And one of my suggestions he took. I was happy about that.
Yeah, I think it's great that the scenario is being looked at again, and that Biff had good updates for it, and Dave is also, taking another swing at it, and I generally like all of the changes that are being proposed. I think they add a lot to the scenario.
Engine upgrades banned.
I mean, that's kind of a good thing. I think that Dave said it right. So he made some other changes to the scenario that would possibly make engine upgrade not necessarily broken the way it is in the original version, in my opinion. But he went ahead and banned it anyway because he felt like if it was included, then it was a pressure on the Imperial player to take engine upgrade as insurance against the Rebel player taking it. And I think that makes a lot of sense, if nothing else.
Yeah. I overall, and then he also added optional lists, like, hey, here's the list that I initially said where it's the same, 150 versus 125 points with these restricted, you have to take Darth Vader in the TIE Advance and then only TIE fighters. And like regular TIE fighters, and then Rebels you have to take Luke, and then the X-wings and Y-wings. And they also said, hey, freeform, you can play with X many points versus X many, and you don't have to stick whichever faction. You can have Scum defending the Death Star versus the Imperials, or whatever, which is neat. And then he took Biff's. Biff had a particular list that had like 10 ships versus 10 ships, and they had like all the pilots from the movie. So you got Porkins and Wedge and Biggs and Dutch and all those guys, Garvin Dreys, and all the people versus a whole bunch of TIE fighters, Darth Vader TIE fighters with EPTs, and it was pretty cool. So I liked the options that you could do. I really want to try actually with Biff's list, and there were a bunch of changes. We don't have to get going into it too much, but I just wanted to say that I thought it was really cool in the FFG forums that the conversation picked up again. And that Dagobah Dave came in, and it was a real scenario development session. So it was pretty cool. I was pretty pleased.
No, I'm actually kind of glad that they've gone back on it, because I think a lot of these scenarios, especially when you get more into the game and more people start playing them, I think it's always good to have feedback and go back to change things based on what people have done essentially to break them. It's one of the aspects of really anything is that you see what happens when the rubber hits the road and then make adjustments to it, because there's just some things that people come up with that you just can't foresee. So
yeah, we still need to go back to some of those earlier missions, but that's why I loved that episode we did talking about the trench run, because I really put a lot of thought into it and all the new pilots and all the new turrets and things.
Right.
I thought it was, I love that episode. It's funny, it's one of our least downloaded episodes, but cool. So that's that, but we can probably roll straight into J-Bot's contest.
Oh, absolutely. I'm been super excited for this because, hey, it lets me do something that's, not just complaining. It lets me actually congratulate some of our awesome fans for some of the craziness that they can come up with. So for people who are maybe new listeners or weren't super aware, we were doing a quick contest to give away a Broken Token mini card box.
Oh, wait. I should say Broken Token. They donated this for us to give away. It's very cool. It is the mini-size American game cards case. Thank you very much, Broken Token. I actually bought one of these I think they're awesome. They're a really good product to use. So if you're looking for good storage that's not a binder, I highly recommend the Broken Token. Go on.
Yeah, it's really cool. Thanks, sir, for that very impromptu advertisement. It was basically what I was asking is for people to just send in essentially pilot cards, or they didn't need to be a full out card. It could just be sentences with them with the pilot abilities for each of our with just the text with each of the 4 lovely people on our little program on our shuttle here. And from those, I would choose the best one, in my opinion. Obviously, this is all opinion here. And they would win our fancy Broken Token prize. So I figured we got tons of entries, and I didn't realize until not just when the flight took off that I needed to actually choose these beforehand. So I actually did have a winner in mind. I just thought there would be more input from everybody else. I didn't realize I was the only one making this decision. And then I realized, oh crap. But we do have some honorable mentions I'm going to do, just a few of them because I don't want to take up the entire time with them.
We should post a lot to the Facebook page, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say for those of you guys who have art and stuff, post those to the Facebook page because they were great. And I'm going to try and send some of these out to the rest of the crew who apparently did not see them, and because there are a lot of them, and I'm going to skip. And I apologize for not mentioning you, but there are some that are awesome with artwork and everything as well, and some of them that are just text or had me cackling.
There really were some fun ones. I saw them.
There really are some fun ones. So I'm going to just do a couple quick honorable mentions. One thing to note: there were a lot of Jim Chadwick doing bad things to stealth ships. So there are a lot of them involved. They don't get cloak dice. They don't get agility dice whenever they, that sort of thing. I want to say there was one that forced them to decloak. There was all sorts of very interesting ones there. So they've obviously got you pegged pretty square.
I have no idea where this is coming from.
What? It's a stunner. We had some really good ones for Jake, essentially trying to fix broken things, everything from shields to maneuvers and that sort of stuff.
The X-Wing.
Right, and had lots of stuff with Phil that had to do with control, with forcing people to make certain decisions or not allowing them to make other decisions, that sort of thing. So, and of course, mine tended to be all over the map, which is fine. That's probably close to the truth. So. Just a couple quick ones right quick. I'm not going to say people's names except for the winner, just to keep it nice and clean. But just some couple examples here. We had one. I'm just going to go through a couple. I'm not going to go through all of the ones that they sent in. But as an example of Jim's, when firing upon a cloaked ship, the defender does not roll the extra 2 green dice. That tended to be a theme that ran through a lot of it.
I like it.
I like, there's one here for Jake that when you ram another ship, randomly spin the other ship's dial to another maneuver. I thought that was fun.
That was
anything like that, I kind of got a kick out of as a just general mess with other ships sorts of abilities. Those are always fun, especially if they don't exist in the game. They tended to be something I enjoyed reading. There's one here for Phil. When defending, you may spend a target lock on the attacker to add a evade result to your roll, which I think that seems like a very standard kind of, wow, that's almost right out of the book sort of thing, which is a lot like Phil, who has all these things nailed down pretty well. And mine tended to kind of be the other end, but even, ones that sort of make sense. So action bar gains the boost icon. When you receive a stress, I may perform a boost action, which is a very interesting ability, especially for a big ship. He got stressed and he can suddenly boost out of the way. It's kind of an interesting idea. Wouldn't mind seeing it in actual gameplay. I think that might be fun. Some of the other ones here, I like how people gave people names. Jim Chadwick, unflappable. If the ship receives a critical hit damage card with pilot modifier, Phil's calm demeanor allows that card to be immediately turned face down. Any number of qualifying critical hits may be canceled this way in a given turn. Very. I don't know how easy that would fit onto a card, but I thought that was pretty good. I actually got some turned in for crew cards for I want to say Gronk there, but it's pretty close. Gonk, which is pretty funny. Yeah, we got some.
Awesome.
Yeah, we got some Gonk cards out here, like this one, Loyal Helper. Tydirium's Gonk droid is always ready to assist the other crew members.
It's true.
During the action phase, Gonk can either allow Jake's ability to be used twice, which is one of the other cards on here, or to reduce the stress of J-Bot's ability, which I won't go into, but basically mine tended to cause some stress. I had a lot of those where mine caused stress. Only one of these may be chosen in a given turn. If either option's chosen, Gonk is considered engaged in its task and can't be used for a couple of turns, that sort of thing.
Cool.
There's also
like
one from the same person, which I thought was funny, the defective ankle critical damage. It's a pilot card. Pilot's ankle damaged in an explosion. Reduce ship's agility by 1.
Oh.
Special. If Captain Jim is the pilot, reduce the ship's agility by 1 and reduce Jim's pilot skill to 5.
Yeah.
So I thought
the
that
truth hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. So like those are just examples. We got some really good ones. And I'll go ahead and give you guys the honorable mention. The one that just really close to winning it. And here, let me read. I want to make sure I get all these because it's a really good combination of a set. So, Pilot Skill 7, Captain Jim Chadwick of the Lambda class shuttle. After you perform an attack that destroys a TIE Phantom, you may destroy the TIE Phantom with an actual hammer.
Ah, I love it. I love it. I like that one.
Ones out there.
I love that.
Yeah, it's great. So we have Chief Engineer Jake, Pilot Skill 5. Before you are placed during setup, roll 1 evade die. On a blank result, you miss this podcast. Do not deploy your ship. Which is fitting because
and it's what that one is really cheap too. That pilot, right?
Yeah,
it's like 16 points or something.
It's a
yeah,
15-point pilot card.
It actually sort of works in the game because it's a really cheap Lambda shuttle, but it may not show up.
Right. So you never know.
That's hysterical. I love it. I love it. I haven't heard any of these. This is fantastic.
Yep. We have Pilot Skill 6, Co-Pilot Phil. Before beginning setup, if you're playing a boring 100-point dogfight, pick a better scenario instead. That thought was good. And
I like that.
Of course, my personal favorite in this, J-Bot, Pilot Skill 4. Not bad. Probably could be a little better. When you are destroyed, tell your opponent to watch their back. They'll need to. So I thought that was a great entry. Unfortunately, as how these things go, there's always somebody better out there. So we had I
have to say I really like mine. The one for the hammer.
No, there's no discredit in that entry. It was very, very good. But like I said, unfortunately, games like this, there has to be a winner, has to be a loser. So our winner for this one, for the contest for the fancy broken token box, was entered by JB07. It has Captain Chadwick at Pilot Skill 3. After you execute a maneuver, you may ask your opponent a question about their favorite food. If your opponent is a protocol droid, you cannot steal their answer. I like that. That was pretty smart.
Oh, yeah. PS3 only.
It's weird how it would work in the game, but,
yeah.
you do ask a lot of questions about food.
Yeah, we did go on about food that one episode for 20-some minutes. Yeah,
obviously an avid listener of the podcast. I like that.
Okay.
Co-pilot Phil Mead, Pilot Skill 2. During the planning phase, you may continuously lecture your opponent about how to write scenarios unless they're a protocol droid. I like that one, too.
I mean, I don't think I lecture people that much, but
I mean, that's
I don't know why I would stop lecturing.
Eye of the beholder, ear of the beholder, maybe. Okay.
Why not a protocol droid? I don't understand that part, but go on.
This person is very specific. I'm just reading what they turned in. Engineer Jake, Pilot Skill 1. You cannot make any new restraining bolts stay out of the cargo hold. I like that. That's really, really good.
Stay out of the cargo hold.
Yeah, this person, whoever turned this JB07 person is obviously a good person. They understand privacy.
Why can't he make any more restraining bolts? I don't get it.
He's probably made enough already, hasn't he? I mean,
I don't know.
We can all agree with that.
No, we can't. There's not enough.
No, and of course the last one is me, J-Bot, your fearless protocol droid for the Shuttle Tydirium. Pilot Skill 10, I feel like it's a little low, but I understand. I understand. You have to have room there for the veteran instincts, so I completely understand. While you're attacking, the enemy may not roll any defense dice. If they have Ewok or Astromech crew, they must discard them and tear the cards in half.
Wait, what? You can't make... Wait. You can't make people tear their cards in half. I mean, that's not cool. Wait a minute.
But this is sorry, guys. Y'all left this decision to me, and this was the best one out of the pack. If you guys wanted to have input on this contest, y'all should have said something right before we took off.
Y'all
left me with no time.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, I have to say that runner-up was a lot better than this one.
It was good. It was good, but apparently this person knew their audience. And they knew you guys were going to be lazy about the contest because I was excited and you guys didn't put forth that much effort. So they targeted their audience, and you can't blame them for that.
I don't know.
Being on target is important in the Star Wars universe.
I mean, I guess it is your contest.
Yeah.
So please go ahead and put JB07 down in the records as our official winner of the first ever Shuttle Tydirium contest.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and write it down here.
Disappointed, I have to admit.
Wait a minute. JB07.
7, yeah, JB0. Yeah.
That's like lead speak or slicer speak, as we say here in the Star Wars universe, for J-Bot, isn't it?
Wait,
slicer speak?
Wait, hang on.
Look at this. It looks exactly like.
What's the slicer speak you speak of?
That totally is
right,
J-Bot.
Jim? Right?
That's J-Bot. You did this. This is
your entry, isn't it? That's why there's all that crap about the protocol droid.
Look, you can't. You're cheated. This is you. You're trying to keep the prize. You cannot win the prize.
If I wanted this prize, I would have stole it in the first place. I mean, I wouldn't have confiscated it and put it up for auction. I had
No, this is totally you. This is totally not cool.
For something I could have easily.
You expect this?
Taken.
Oh, just J-Bot pilot has pilot skill 10. Expect us to buy that?
Everything deals about protocol droids. This is totally you.
You get to discard people's cards and make them tear the cards in half. They have
Okay. Well,
Astromechs.
I asked this JB07, whoever you are, I'm sure you're handsome and awesome, to please respond to these two people and tell them that this was a real entry. It came in like every other entry to my mailbox.
This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. As the captain, I have to step in here. I have to veto this one. This is not going to happen. We cannot go with this entry. This is gone. This is out. JB07.
We're going to lose a listener because of this.
That's okay.
Don't make us use the restraining bolt, J-Bot. I know it's fastened securely.
Unbelievable. Okay, if y'all want to ruin the sanctity of the contest, then I guess all we can do is give it to the second place person.
Yes, please do. Who is it?
The person, hold on, let me look this up. I wasn't prepared for this part, crying out loud. Let me see. William Hoffman. So
awesome. Congratulations, William Hoffman.
Congratulations, William Hoffman.
From somewhere
I hope you're happy with yourself because this JB07 person might be coming after you for that broken token.
What was that one card? If you defeat destroy JB0T, J-Bot, look out. You'll have to. What is it?
Yeah, that's right. Tell your opponent to watch their back. They'll need to.
Yeah, that was awesome. And you can smash the Phantom with a hammer. I love that one. Yeah, like I read that. I heard that. I was like, yes.
So, well, I'm glad everybody enjoyed our second place winner. Somehow usurped our first place winner, dutifully chosen by me. But thanks to everybody who turned in an entry. We will make contact with this Hoffman person if you are a real person, and for all I know, it could be one of you two, crying out loud. And William, Phil, that's pretty close. Both got ills in it.
So you should have his email address. We can respond back, get his address so I can mail this out. Hopefully it's not somewhere very far away that's going to cost me an arm and a leg.
Well, can't cost you a leg.
True. I got an old replacement ankle I can send.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks everybody for turning in the entries. They were great. I'm going to try and post some on the Facebook page when I get some free time.
Yes.
And please feel free to post the ones if you've already got all the files or whatever right in front of you. Go ahead and post them up. I'll try and remember to start a thread for them once the episode airs, so that there's no kind of big surprise. that who didn't win, that sort of thing. But they were great. They're hilarious. I really did not realize until like an hour ago that no one else was reading these except for me. So I'm at work cackling. My coworkers are wondering what's going on, and I was like, "Why is no one else laughing at these but me? Like, no one else is responding but me. Why are these so funny and no one else is saying anything?" So now I know.
I want to see them, so that's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah, it's my email is crammed filled with them. So thanks everybody, and stay tuned. We will do another similar contest, different thing, different rules, instructions, that sort of thing, in the near future. But let's get this one settled and make sure our winner enjoys his free loot.
I like Jake. You roll the die. If it's a blank, you don't deploy. It's the episode.
Right. Yeah. It's a 15-point ship. I mean, like Phil said, it could be balanced. Maybe we should. It's almost willing to play that one to see how balanced it is. You never know. What's that? A 2 out of what is it? 2 out of 8, 3 out of 8 for?
Was it? I guess it depends if it's. I think it's 3 out of 8 if it's a green die.
Yes, it's evade it's looking for. So
yeah. So I think it's 3 out of 8. That's pretty funny. That's hysterical, though. I like that. I like that. Congratulations, William Hoffman.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. I think it's time to go into, at this point, the
Heroes of the Aturi Cluster.
Awesome. I love that intro. I love it. I keep coming up with segments just for Here's the Tree Cluster, just to put that intro in. But
that is what it feels like sometimes, is that we're doing a lot of heroes now all of a sudden, that we've got a big voice to intro us in.
You know, someone else posted again on the Facebook page that there's another website that has posted Here's the Tree Cluster. It was Geek and Sundry, and I think even just in the past week there was another one that had posted another review of Here's the Tree Cluster. I gotta say, this Here's the Tree Cluster, when we did our interview, that was the week that was the year anniversary that HotAC is out. But all of a sudden, not till just recently, suddenly all these places are really throwing up articles on it. I just got to say that it could just be perhaps a certain podcast that's really pushing it. That's
absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think you're right. I mean, there was that episode of Minox Squadron where they talked about Here's the Turret Cluster.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
I mean, FFG put a thing out.
It's us.
Oh yeah, the FFG put a thing out about casual play and beginner play, and I mean, they didn't do any of this stuff before we existed. So I mean, I can only draw one very simple straight line out of those things, and that's
their whole news article was just to point towards us and the announcement of our podcast. You know, that first week, the week we came out and we released our episode, and then they did that whole news article. So totally about us. Yeah.
Yep. So I'm glad it's getting out there. I mean, I think we've hit a tipping point, and we're just, spearheading the entire campaign. I love it. It's great.
Yeah. So, and I'm glad we got that interview done. That was so cool, and I'm so thankful for him for writing it. But what I want to talk about tonight is, it's just a little one. There have been people talking about once again different ships that they want to play in Here's the Turret Cluster. So the E-Wing and the K-Wing are two favorites that people really love and they really want to put into the game. And they're just too powerful. Like everybody agrees, even the people who love them, they're like, yeah, it's just they're just too much. If as they are, you move to them, PS4 and all those upgrades and everything, they're just too much more powerful than the Y-Wing and the X-Wing. And people were kind of coming up with different ideas as to how you can allow them to be in the game but not be so broken. And someone posted an idea I really like, and that was actually me. I came up with an idea.
Oh, here we go.
You happen to like your own idea?
I do like my own idea, and I have a podcast.
I
so
get in trouble for
about
this,
it.
and apparently it's okay for the pilot to like his old stuff.
Yeah. So I really liked it. I think it's something that would probably need playtesting, but I think it's a really good concept. Because right now, as it is, people are just using E-Wings and K-Wings and saying, oh, yeah, it's broken, but I still love it. But the general idea is that the ships are so much better, and particularly once you start adding in all the modifications. So the idea is, instead of it being PS4 when you switch to the other ships, take it to PS6. So when you start at PS6 with these is when you can switch over to the E-Wing and the K-Wing. And not just that, though. The modification slots that happened before PS6 are deleted, and you're not allowed to use them.
Right, so you have, how many total modification slots? If you have
there's
E-Wing?
the starter modification slot, and then at PS4 you get a modification slot, and those are just blacked out on the E-Wing and K-Wing. And so then at PS6 you get your first modification slot.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is, let's say with the E-Wing or K-Wing, so if you completely go to the highest PS9, at most you'll get 2 modifications total for those ships. But the idea is, if you're with an X-Wing or a Y-Wing, you get to keep those modifications. So it kind of makes it, an E-Wing with 1 or 2 modifications versus, say, an X-Wing with 4 or a Y-Wing with 4. And that idea kind of balances it out. So if you're even the X-Wing, you get integrated astromech, which is a free shield. And then you've got, let's say, engine upgrade, which gives you the boost. And then you can have a whole nother modification slot, and the E-Wing doesn't get that. So it starts with a 3 evade, and it's got a system slot, and it can do the evade action, and a bit of a better dial, but it's still, you could beef up a freaking X-Wing, like extra shield and R2-D2, and, a lot of that's all pretty powerful. And in the Y-Wing, the K-Wing, with all its ordnance, really would like guidance chip and extra munitions, because extra munitions is a modification, and also probably wants advanced slam, but it's only going to get 2 of those modifications. And it's only even going to get the second one at the highest PS8. So which ones do you go for? Do you go for guidance chip? Do you go for extra munitions? And if you're a Y-Wing, hey, at PS6, you've already got 3 of them. You can go for extra munitions, guidance chip, and anything else. Like, hey, vector thrusters, or you want to throw on an extra shield to be even with the Y-Wing, get, shield upgrade. So you'll have 8 torpedoes that you can fire with guidance chip, and they'll have the slots they'll have to buy for 2 torpedoes and a missile, and maybe they'll have guidance chip, or maybe they'll have extra munitions. I think if you do it that way, it really limits the power level of the K-Wing and the E-Wing to be about the same as a buffed up X-Wing and Y-Wing.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good way to go about it. I think there's really just a handful of modifications that really are sort of power multipliers. I think that's engine upgrade, extra munitions, guidance chip, vector thrusters, auto thrusters. I mean, you may not need all of those on one particular ship. Like if you're not planning on shooting torpedoes, you can write off extra munitions and guidance chip right off the bat.
Right.
And like an E-Wing doesn't really need vector thrusters, obviously, but engine upgrade, all thrusters would be awesome on an E-Wing.
Yeah. And shield, if you've got R2-D2 or some other shield regen bot, getting extra shield upgrades, that's pretty potent.
I think it depends on the ship you're flying. I think if you're flying a Y-Wing or a K-Wing, then it's not as good, because your hull and your shields are worth less because they have less agility dice protecting them. Like a shield on an E-Wing is worth a lot more than a shield on a K-Wing, right? Because it's protected by 3 agility dice.
Right, or an X-Wing.
Yeah.
But let's say you get an X-Wing and you spend 2 of those modification slots on shield upgrades. So you've got an X-Wing with 5 shield, 4 shield.
Yeah, it's nothing to sniff at. Really.
Yeah, that you've got the E-Wing and it's got its measly 2 hull and 3 shield at that point, and it's, I don't know, it kind of more of a level playing field at that point.
Yeah, I think this would work just fine, really, as something to allow people to take these ships.
And it's for the people who really want to include them in the campaign. They really want to fly them and put them in. And I would even be able to say that it might even be better to not take those and stick with the X-wing or Y-wing. So you might even be almost downgrading to be taking one of these other ships. So I don't know. It's an thought. I think it's an idea for those people that really want to include them.
Right.
I think I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think through with the K-wing, and I don't have the cards in front of me. So differences aside from dial and aside from the slam, what are the differences in the K-wing and the Y-wing?
Well, the Y-wing's got a better dial.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Aside from the dials, ignore the dials.
K-wing is a native turret, but you're probably gonna have a turret in your Y-wing anyway at that point.
Yeah, so basically,
at that point, you'd have
they both have turrets. They both have 2 torpedo slots.
Yep.
K-wing has one more shield.
K-wing has one more shield. The K-wing also has a missile slot and a bomb slot. Actually, 2 bomb slots. My mistake. And it's got a crew slot, while the Y-wing's got an astromech slot.
Yeah. So yeah, it's different. I mean, it's still very much a bomber ship, but there are differences.
Yeah, I guess I don't. The E-wing I can kind of understand because with those 2 extra modifications, I can see, it being, massively more powerful than an X-wing just by just putting pure shields on it for those first 2 modifications by itself makes it a very, very dangerous ship. But the K-wing I don't really see as super overpowered because you have all those slots.
Slam.
No, Slam's a great ability, but it also basically turns you off for the entire rest of the turn, short of dropping a single bomb.
Well, the difference is if you go with guidance chip and extra munitions, then you've basically got 4 torpedoes, 2 missiles, and 4 bombs. And then you do things like near Dantil, shooting 360, and etc. Yeah. And with a crew, you're basically like, why would you ever take a Y-wing if you can take a K-wing?
Well, yeah, and that's where I've always gone to. I don't see it as so massively overpowered that it shouldn't be, that it, I guess, should be completely eliminated from the game. But I do think it's powerful, but I've always been of it needs to be the next level up. Same with the E-wing is really, instead of hacking out like, oh, you need to lose the mods, I've always said, well, the game needs to adjust to it anyway. Because, by the time you're at pilot skill 8, you're still flying against academies in a lot of cases. And so, to me, it's like the whole game at that point needs to kind of shunt itself towards the harder end of the spectrum as much as possible.
Well, there are you are starting the missions where if your average pilot skill is of a certain grade, then it either increases the pilots or it starts adding in ships. But I think overall, even the time frame is supposed to be the early part of Galactic Civil War. The E-wing's not around yet, and the K-wings aren't around yet, and it kind of fits a certain time frame. And those ships aren't even existing there.
Right. Right. And for example, a TIE-FO would be way out of time if you had it, or a T-70 even.
Yeah, and I like the idea of being sticking with one of the regular ships. Like, why do you have to upgrade? You should be able to have a viable ship if you stick with an X-wing or a Y-wing. But if you can just switch over straight away with no issues to a K-wing, why would you ever not? Like, there's no
that's
reason.
Why I always said it should be further down the. Essentially, you have to be in something. You can't just go Y to K, for example. It'd have to be Y to B to K or Y to Hawk to K sort of thing to make it the next tier up.
I like also the idea of sticking with a Y. Like, why should it be able to a Y should be a valid ship later in the game?
No, I don't think it's not a valid ship. I mean, we heard from the creator of the thing that he has one of his players who has a high level Y-wing that can solo the last mission of the game. They're obviously powerful ships. That's why it's like, okay, if one can do it with appropriately built ships, then a shield here or a couple extra missiles there doesn't obviously make that much of a difference.
Well, if you're looking at a K-wing with the modifications, so let's say PS6, you've got 3 modifications. Go with extra munitions, guidance chip, And then who knows? You could have advanced slam, you could have a shield, you could have a vectored thrusters at that point. So then you've got basically maxed out torpedoes with guidance chip and still more modifications to go. And it's just it blows the Y-wing out of the water at that point. There's like no reason to continue with the Y-wing if you can straight away with no detriment switch to the K-wing.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like an obvious choice if you didn't have the loss of the modifications or something else.
Yeah. And so
I mean, I get it from a thematic standpoint. I mean, it just doesn't fit the time period as well. So I certainly understand that that's kind of a end all be all to me. Is it's like, no, that's not what it's not the time frame. Like you said, like putting a TIFO out there or one of the new X-wings out there just doesn't fit the time period that the game is designed for.
Right. So if you're one of those people that really wants to play with one of those, you've got a player who's like, whines constantly. Then this might be an option for you to present it to them to actually go through. So hopefully that's a good idea. There's one last thing to talk about is a number of people have mentioned that they think an A-wing would be a good starter ship because even within the story, the official canon has changed. It used to be A-wings were developed later, but with Star Wars Rebels, it turns out the A-wings is what they started with, and then ended up getting Y-wings and then eventually X-wings.
So,
but
I have one point about it. I mean, I'm not sure that the A-wings that we see in Rebels are really the same as the A-wings that we see later in Return of the Jedi. I mean, obviously they're both A-wings, but to me it seems like they're two different models. I mean, it could be one of two things. It could be that they're really different models, or it could be that it's an artistic decision on the part of the animators, the same way that they've changed the look of the TIE fighters a little bit and the look of the Star Destroyers. They have like the giraffe neck Star Destroyers.
Yeah, I think they've got early Star Destroyers is how I see it. But do you think it's because they look different? Because I don't see any difference, but I'm not
they definitely do look a little different. Like the way, a good way to look at it is the tail fins at the engines. The fins on the Rebels A-wings are slanty, and the tail fins on the Return of the Jedi A-wings are not slanted, I believe. I'm going to look at that now to make sure I'm right.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try to Google this, but yeah, I'll have to take a look. But I think overall, though, it's not a bad thing if you wanted to start with an A-wing. Like a lot of people are saying, oh, it's too hard. A-wings really struggle in it. And I think if you don't pool the experience, they could. But I think pooling experience, they do fine. And when we played A-wings, we had a guy who loved A-wings, and he stayed on mission. We were the ones that would be engaging the TIE fighters and stuff, and the A-wing would go blow up the beacons or would go to the ion clouds and scan them or do whatever the little mission requirements were, and he was able to get all over the place, and avoid a lot of fire and get those tasks done while we were engaging stuff. And it always worked out great. And I guess, but we started pooling experience as well, so it wasn't such a hard problem for that person to advance. And I think there's builds, with outmaneuver and all. And I think expose, since we talked about it before, is actually not like push the limit. Expose is not a bad upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure, but
I think it's worth trying. Maybe even Predator and Expose, you wouldn't even need to push the limit. I think if you had Predator, because you wouldn't necessarily need the adjustment. Because if you're all three dice, rolling
push
two,
the limit is good for a number of reasons, including better repositioning opportunities. in addition to, your offensive or defensive actions.
True. But getting like, eventually if you can get outmaneuver, push the limit, predator, and expose, I think would be
right. I mean, yeah. If you're piling expose on top of something else, then that's better. Especially if you're having expose on a ship that you think you'll be able to reliably arc dodge with, that's obviously better because you avoid the loss of the agility die as a drawback to that ability.
Right, like if you're outside their arc, like outmaneuver and expose could work well because you're reducing, their agility because you're not in their firing arc, and you don't need, you don't care about the -1. But yeah, I think.
I'm just still not sure if it's better than, because say you have push limit, expose, outmaneuver. Is it better to push the limit for focus and target lock, or expose and target lock?
Yeah, if you had, say, Predator, you wouldn't need the target lock. You could just do the focus expose. And then you'd get rerolls, Yeah.
Just take Fin Crew.
Yeah.
All those crew now that just make the thing so much more complicated. Do I take all this stuff and Fin? How do I do this?
Yeah. So I did actually email the creator, and he said that he had some crazy idea in mind where he wants to make all ships viable, and he's got this whole thing going on, but it's going to take forever to do. So until he actually comes up with things, you can use these various alternate ideas to play some X-Wing. So cool. That's our Heroes of the Turi cluster. Other comments, J-Bot?
No, I think it's interesting as a exercise to see what it would be like to run one of the K-Wings or E-Wings locked out, as you described it, with the mod slots kind of locked.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how if it's as disgustingly overpowered or not to have all that stuff in there.
Yeah.
Do you think you would need to do anything to adjust for switching into an attack shuttle?
I've thought about that. Because I thought that some of the stuff for attack shuttle would be. I noticed that you're actually a bit limited with an attack shuttle because you don't get a lot of upgrades.
You get crew, turret, right?
Yeah,
crew
you
and
get
turret.
Crew, turret, and that's it.
I mean, I think that's better than, say, the upgrade bar on a X-Wing.
Yeah, well, you get, for that you've got...
Or an A-Wing.
Astromech, and, yeah. But, it's also, so it's only 2 shield, 2 hull.
Yeah.
And the dial is interesting, but not, like, crazy. It's got, a bunch of red.
It's got barrel roll. That's nice.
Yeah. No target lock ability. I was thinking, I'm thinking you could probably pop it in as a PS4 switchover. And people were thinking that the ARC 170 would probably be a good PS4 switchover without too much of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little better than a B-Wing.
Yeah, I think the ARC's a more powerful ship, really, when you get down to some of these other ones. Just having the crew and droid slots open opens so much of opportunities. I think the shuttle in general, as an upgrade ship, I don't see it as being that big of an issue because, I mean, with just a crew and a turret, it's basically a Hawk. I mean, when you boil it down to it, with a different dial, and
it's a Hawk with less hits, a different dial, and not as much upgrade. Like the Hawk, it's illicits and
it's got a free attack primary though.
I mean that's a big trade-off. Yeah, because the Hawk can't do anything basically without a turret. I mean, I guess it technically can, but I mean, realistically it can't. And a Hawk has 1 shield versus the attack shuttles 2. And I guess this is me not being an expert. Shields feel more important than hull in general.
They are better.
Yeah, but it has one additional hull, which is great and everything. But that shield is a little bit more valuable. So I think that plus just the primary attack in general is to me is enough to balance it out to where I wouldn't see any
barrel
need.
roll.
Oh, does it have barrel roll? I don't have
it
that.
has
One.
native barrel roll.
Yeah. Oh, and it can't target lock though.
Yeah, but you can live without target lock.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many ways to get one that I think it's
when I was
as big a deal.
Chatting with Josh about things, he actually talked about the idea of even using tech in some things, and I mentioned the idea of tech with the Hawk because the Hawk almost seems like one of those electronic warfare ships, like one of those radar jammers that flies off the coast, and jams things like super far away, and having like a Hawk with a tech slot would boost the Hawk a bit, because no one else could get that. You could, there's some pretty cool Hawk builds. Like, let's see, because let's see, if you get, like, let's say you go with, the title, which I think you have to go with the title for the Hawk with you get a stack of focus tokens, but then you can do things like weapons guidance. When attacking, you may spend a focus token to change a blank till a hit. And you've got a stack of focus tokens, boom. Or was there anything else? But even like that right there, where you could change a blank. It says you can spend a focus to change one blank to a hit. So yeah, so if you've got, it's another way you can turn your turrets to actually do, to be pretty accurate. I think it's I think having tech on a Hawk would be pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. It's obviously my favorite ship, but at the same time, I feel like it's one of those old ships that's just been kind of forgotten by the developers in a lot of ways. It's never been updated. It's never really been given any help. Any help that it has been given has more been kind of ancillary. Oh, look, we put out a TLT. No, not for the Hawk. That was just put out there, and it's not the only ship that can use it, sort of thing. So anything ultimately to help it out, I think, would be great. I know this is just for HotAC, but in general, I feel like it's got some interesting builds it can be in HotAC. But I, even as a fan of it, I still prefer the Y-Wing over it in HotAC, just for kind of usability, general kind of usability.
Yeah. Okay. Even when he said, Josh, what he said in his area, there is a guy, when you hit PS4 or 5, he said you got Moldy Crow, Recon Specialist, Cloaking Device, and Auto Blaster Turret. And then you start getting other pilot abilities like Jake, Sabine, or Garvin. And it just starts getting really gross, he said. So any of those, like Sabine, where you get a free barrel roll, or Garvin Drays, where you spend a focus, you can give it to somebody else, and if they use it, you get a free support experience point for that. And so if you start doing some of these things with the Hawk, you could be a little crazy with it. I do like the idea of the stealth device.
Yeah, and we've seen somebody, Doc ran one of those in our local one with the stealth device and all that stuff souped onto it. So it can be scary, and it can be a surprisingly good tank ship with stealth device and other stuff until it burns out. But it can be good for a very short jaunt every once in a while.
Yeah, cool. All right. So do we want to go into our overall main segment discussion now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Epic. So I think our main topic is rambling on Epic. So I've played a bunch of Epic games, not a whole million of them, but I've played more than everybody else, I think. And Phil's been playing the CR90 some, and I've played the occasional game with JBot, but I set something up this past weekend. It was my first game back in a while, and we set up. I took a general purpose 400 points versus 400 points, all the Epic ships, and a bunch of small ships, and I made sure that every ship, every of the new modifications were on one of those ships. and a bunch of different crew and different strategy. And TIE Punisher Jason, J-Bot, and I just kind of went at it and had a big fun game.
So Jim, tell me again, how did that game end?
Okay,
because I don't recall the end. I had to leave, and all I do remember was because I was playing all the rebels, like the entire Rebel 400.
We were going to have more people who didn't show up,
and all I remember was a nearly crippled Raider and an untouched wing of X-wings swooping in from the side, basically on its, not on its 6, but back it's 8 o'clock at this point. And I'm like, Jim, you got this. Take over. I gotta go. I gotta go to a birthday party. And the next thing I know, Jason's bragging. What happened? I need to know.
The Raider had all its parts, but it was pretty crippled. The CR-90 had its front blasted, and the rear was okay. And the Gazanti ended up getting shot up by the X-Wings with the GR-75 ramming it. And there was a bunch of Y-Wings, a whole squad of X-Wings, and I took over, and I was still on the heavy narcotics at that point. And
blame it on the drugs.
In 2 rounds, I ran over 4 ships with the CR-90, and only one of them was an enemy ship. I hit the 2 A-Wings that were right on the Raider's tail, and then I totally ran over one of the fresh X-Wings that hadn't been touched, and then I hit one of the interceptors. It was pretty ugly.
Yeah, so basically 2 A-Wings. Let me quote Jim, on the Raider's tail. In other words, like right up on. It was like in range 1 or something. It was really close. I had them basically hovering right behind that ship, and 3 untouched, unscathed, beautiful, pristine X-Wings swooping in for the kill, and he ran over them. Like, really? Like this is what happens when I leave the table. But no, I had fun. It was actually a blast. There was I could obviously fill this entire podcast with issues I had in general. And I told Jim, I said there's some things I wanted to bring up. I'll let you guys with whether the rules or not, I don't know. So I will bring them up and let you guys say you're an idiot, that's in the rules or not. So one of the things I think we all agree on is if one half or the other of the ship is destroyed, like it still blocks the other half, right? So if I'm firing from the tail end, like in our example, the front end of the CR-90 was gone. Like it met with a very devastating end. But the tail end like wasn't hurt at all, or at least for a while wasn't hurt at all.
And it kept ramming. But I totally agree that when your front is blasted, and you start ramming people, that I guess technically in the rules you take no damage at all.
Yeah. And that's one of the things Jason and I discussed this. He's the guy we played with. We discussed this tonight. And we didn't think it was in the rules. We were fairly certain that if you were ramming somebody and your front end's gone, you take no damage. And by the same token, like if somebody rammed you, the same sort of deal. Does it also work the same if all you can see is the front to shoot, right? You do no damage essentially to the ship.
Yeah, you can't target the rear section. Yeah.
Right. And see, those were the 2 things that he and I talked about. One, like there's the crit cards bug me, and I'm kind of lump these 2. The crit cards for some of the ships bug me, because some of them are devastating and some of them aren't that good. But what sort of makes sense to me is that let's say you cripple the front of the ship. If you have no shot, you should still be able to essentially shoot the front of the ship, because some of the crits do damage to the back of the ship. So as an example, like the back of the ship has a structural failure critical card where it takes a crit and then it does 2 damage to the front of the ship. Like 2 hull damage to the front of the ship. Like that to me is, that's how you get around a ship. I'm just going to make sure I keep the front of this essentially devastated ship between you and everybody else. And to me,
it's not that hard to maneuver yourself to get a shot on the other.
It shouldn't be. But in all honesty, I've played in, like I was saying earlier, I've basically driven the ship 4 times or a ship 4 times, and all the games I've played in, it does become the biggest pain in the butt. Because essentially, someone who's a relatively good pilot, they move faster than people think. So if you tear out the tail end of one of the ships, it does take a little time to get adjusted, especially if that person's swinging the ship all over the place. I know the first ever game I played of X-Wing involved one of the CR-90s, and the other team basically blasted out the engines of it, the engine half of it, and lost the game because they could not get a clean shot on the front of it without essentially running into the ship, because of the pilot of the ship was essentially flying it in such a way that to get themselves lined up, I guess they could have if they had just torn off and taken off away from the ship and come back.
That also was a demo game.
It was a demo game, but the people running the Imperial side were all players. Like they were, because I remember sitting there because they were arguing the rules with you. I remember that specifically, and I'm like, well, these guys know what they're doing. I don't understand why they keep hitting the ship. I don't understand why they keep flying into the sides of this thing. So I to me, it bothers me a little bit. For both sides. I mean, like, wait a minute. I've completely had the front end of my ship demolished. Like, why can't you shoot through the blue line at this point? Because essentially the blue line's not there anymore. The whole front of the ship is not necessarily gone, but it's to the point that, it's utterly inoperable sort of thing.
Yeah, but it's still,
in a way,
it's a mangled heap, but it's still there.
All right, but in a way, in a sense, it speeds the game up too, because it's like, we tore up the tail end of this thing, but now we can actually make strafing runs across the ship and actually take out the front of it, short of being.
But really, I think that even especially if we approach this from like a balance point of view, epic ships do not need to be easier to kill. In my opinion,
I do see that.
But I mean, when you're forced to have an epic ship on both sides, I mean, I don't see them as super easy to kill.
You're not always forced to have an epic ship on both sides.
Well,
That's sort of a sloppy fix to.
Well, see, that's where like I have a different definition of epic. Like to me, epic's not 300 points. That's not an epic game to me. Like I don't care what anybody says, that's not an epic game. Yeah. Epic has to include epic ships. Like that's the whole point. Like. But it's like, it's an epic game. No, you're just playing a lot of points.
Yeah, it's like
it's like one guy the 5,000 point 40K game an epic game. No, it's not an epic game. It's a completely different game for epic. Like
it's like a guy who's been to a bunch of tournaments for epic, but he had never played with any of the epic ships because it was just a 300-point tournament at that point.
Yeah, just a 300-point tournament.
Yeah. Now I'll say I see your beef with the shooting through the front. I still think I don't think it's that bad to have to circle around and hit the back. I see what you're saying. I'm not like completely against the idea, but I'm not necessarily as thrilled about. I think it's okay, but the kind of just to be forced to go around and shoot at the rear. But I do dislike the idea that ramming does not hurt the rear, and I think we need to include a house rule when we play. That if your front's blasted and you ram someone, instead of taking the crit in the front you get a crit in the rear, because that's still gotta suck.
But see, that's the thing that doesn't. If you're gonna play by the whole, you can't shoot through the front, then how can doing anything to the front damage the rear end of it at that point? Because
I think you're still ramming and it's still jarring. You know what I mean? When you're ramming your whole ship and it's crunching up, and there's not much of the front that's left. I think it still makes sense when you're structurally can take damage in the rear, when you're ramming someone.
Yeah, that's where I come to the whole. If I were to house rule it, I'd house rule that anything done to the front would essentially cascade to the rear side of the ship. So,
and I would disagree with that.
Yeah, that's how it works. I mean, that's how these things work. You lose the front of a tank. The rear end of the tank is going to start getting shot from the front.
I don't know.
That's how this works. Like, that's how these things tend to work. When the front of something is gone, it tends
but it's
to
not
push
really
through
gone,
to the back.
though. It's crippled, right? First of all, the card says that it's crippled, not gone, right?
Yeah.
You haven't completely removed the front. It's not like you took a saw and cut the ship in half and threw away the front.
Right, but
the
also
front of the ship is there. It's just a blasted slag of heap. But you can't exactly shoot right through a blasted slag of heap as though it weren't there. Your blasters are hitting it. They're just blowing up stuff that's already been, essentially destroyed, but is still physically there.
Right. So then, by that same measure, ramming with that portion of the ship's going to do nothing to the rear end either, which is how they're playing it.
I say if you look like I don't know, it's like a bomber or a ship, or let's say a ship, like a destroyer or something. And if the front of it gets destroyed to the point that like the rooms and etc. or in everything in there is inoperable, but it's still a ship and it's still going. But if that ship rams something, like the structural damage is still going to hit the rear, and it's still going to affect the rear of the ship. But like if you shoot at the front, it's just going to hit all the walls and crap and the metal that's still there, but not go through to the back of the ship.
But that's why I thought only crits should move through. And that's where my original point was, that only criticals could move through, because normal damage to the front doesn't do anything, but there are crits in the deck that specifically say structural collapse that do damage to the other portion of the ship. So it's like that's what they're there for, is to cascade the damage to the other half of the ship. So by their own rules, they've got it in there that it does it. So it just makes sense that, so for example, I ram with the front of the ship. It's an automatic critical to my ship, right? Well, guess what? If the crit, if I turn it over, says, ooh, locking clamps again, because that's the effing stupid thing in the whole game, then like that does nothing. But if it says, a structural collapse and it does 2 damage to the hull, the rear portion of the ship, okay, that's what happens. If I'm just shooting randomly at the front of it and just do normal damage, it shouldn't do anything. But if I actually crit the front of it, it gives you a reason to essentially, hey, do you want to waste shots on the front of this thing hoping to get crits, or using the automatic crits that are so much in the game now? Or do you want to try and make an attack run to the back? Because it might take you running through most of the deck and you're still not going to kill the back end. But you can at least cripple it to a large degree. Does that make sense? Like, because the cards are there for a reason. And there's only a certain stack of them. There's only, I don't remember how many there were, but there's not that many.
And some of them are like, lose a team in this section. Well, if you've already lost the team, it does nothing. So
yeah, and the thing, part of it that got on my nerves, and I don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it, is that like the smaller ships, I do not know the Rebel Transport, is that what it is?
The GR-75 or Rebel Transport.
The one that had basically nothing on it was just a ramming ship for me.
No weapons.
It had no guns on it. So it's like, okay, so it's supposed to get out there and just be annoying and get in other ships' way. I'm like, I would never fly this in a real game. Like if I were to try and build a list, I would never purposely put it in there other than to make sure that I had one of everything. And then the docking clamps on the Gazanti were just annoying as all get out, because there are 6 critical cards in there for 4 docking clamp ship. Like what I'm confused. How does this work? How are there 6 crits in there for something that only has 4 of it?
Yeah, and you don't even have to take the docking clamps as one of your cargo options.
Right. And this actually pins to something I mentioned while we were playing with Jim, which I think would be a very interesting way of doing it. I don't know how FFG would make it work, but I think it would be fun. Essentially, everything you buy on a ship should add a crit card to the deck specifically for that upgrade. So not necessarily like crew and stuff, but say your was it torpedo tubes, missile tubes? Say you put that modification on, and you basically add a crit to the deck for that section that they're located in. I don't know if it's the whole ship or not. That is magazine strike sort of thing, where it essentially cripples the tubes for that section. I know that's an upgrade card, but it might cripple the tubes and do like one hull directly to it, or flip another crit sort of thing. But the idea would be, this is a card that you have to kind of balance. Do you want to put this on the ship because it could theoretically do more damage? And by that token, all those docking clamps, hey, if you don't put this on there, all the docking clamp crits come out of the deck. sort of
Actually,
thing.
I think that's pretty cool because even with the crew cars, there's like, oh, airlock or, something happens where
Yeah,
they're...
it could probably come up with ones for other stuff too.
Because there actually are crew ones where it says like, oh, these people get sucked out into space or something like that. Like, because I had those tonight.
The crits are fun, but then when you hit a ship, because we had it happen to both of us, where just horrible, like, we finally critted the thing, and it was like, I think I broke 4 or 5 of the docking clamps on that Gazanti before I blew it out of space.
You did.
There were never any ships on it. He never had one docked, so it was just there. Yeah,
I had the option. I gave the docking clamps, but I let Jason deploy. He didn't have anything deployed on it, and he did crit 4 docking clamp crits, which like did nothing. It's just docking clamp. If something's on it, take damage. If not, flip it over.
Yeah,
I think
one more point.
It would be cool if you had things like that. Oh, you add in various, turbo lasers and stuff, and it adds things to the crit deck. I think that would actually be pretty cool to do, or Tabana gas, that does something, or like some sort of comms booster. Like all these weird, unique ones would add these weird, unique crits to the table. It probably would be cool. Complicated to do, but it sounds like a cool concept.
Yeah, it might be a little complicated, but I think it could work as a general concept of essentially your ship has basic crits. Standard stuff like the structural collapses and things like that. But then every upgrade you put on it comes with a corresponding crit card to add into. The problem would be, stuff that can be put in both halves, front and back. You'd need 2 cards, one for both halves, sort of thing. But in general, as an idea, I think it would be fun.
I should have put Mofjer Jared on the Imperial Raider because he had so many crits. And he's the one who gets sucked out the airlock, but he gets rid of a crit.
That's funny. But no, in general, I had fun with it. It is my biggest thing is it's time consuming when you start to get to that many points with what much stuff as we had on the table. With 2 people per side, it would have gone a little bit faster. But
it was 400 points, and
it was hard to juggle a bit from my side, not knowing all of the upgrade cards on the ships, and even with the pilots of the smaller craft being relatively straightforward, all the other stuff was a bit overwhelming for one person to
and it was
be like their 3rd or 4th try.
Yeah. So I do say that the more you play, the easier it gets. The more players you have, the easier it gets. If you start Epic, don't load up with every crazy thing you can on the Epic ships. I thought we were going to have more people playing, so I did load up a bit heavy on the Epics. So
yeah, they were definitely kitted out with everything. It seemed like there wasn't an empty slot.
There were, but not a lot. Not a lot. So if you're new to Epic, don't play with all the slots. Also, there's 2 different schools of thought when it comes to having small ships in the game. So if you're going to have few players, it's easier to actually have your squad. So I found just do squads, like 3 A-Wings, 3 X-Wings, 4 TIE Fighters, 3 Interceptors, things like that. And when you do it, have the squad all the same pilot skill. And that way you move them all at one time and you shoot them all at one time. You just kind of do them all, and it's good. But if you've got a lot of players involved, and you're having a hard time keeping everybody kind of actually paying attention, then you want to spread out the pilot skill so that everybody's doing something. So it's not like, oh, you're the one guy who's got the 4 TIE Fighters. Yeah, I'm going to go to the bathroom and get a drink and talk to my buddy and, let me know when you're done. So there's less of that, and there's more of, okay, go. I got one. Oh, next, I got one. And you kind of go through that way. Yeah. So the more people, it's better to split the pilot skills up.
I think another thing that is good to do, and you have to be a little careful with this, but it can definitely speed things up and eliminate a lot of downtime that you get in these epic games, is if you have more than one player on each side, so you have at least a 2-on-2 or more, and you have a battle happening over a whole board, a whole 6x3 map, then if you have the opportunity to, you should divide up the action a little bit between different areas of the board. So if you have an engagement on the left side and an engagement on the right side, and there's no way that they can interact with each other, they're completely out of range of each other, then, you should feel free to, do both simultaneously in the interest of moving things forward and keeping everybody busy. That's what I think anyway.
No, that certainly makes sense because we used to do that. If you have a really, really big game, that makes a lot of sense too. It can be a little bit tricky, but if not everybody knows how to play, but if everybody does, it should be pretty straightforward to kind of keep that action moving along. But that is a good point though.
Yeah. So I think if you're new to Epic and you want to get into it, don't kit out everything. Put as many generic pilots as you can. Don't go crazy on the upgrades for the Epic ships. And try to have a few different people playing so they all kind of get the rules a bit. And I think that's a good way to start to get into it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I have some points to make about Epic. One is that if you're playing with a lot of people, it's a good idea to have somebody that is in charge of keeping track of what pilot skill step of activation you're at. Because if you have more than 4 people playing, then sometimes, you'll get done moving your ships, and the next person won't realize that it's their turn yet, and you can have sort of this dead time where people think that the other guy's just thinking about their move or something.
Yeah, and they don't realize it. The barker, basically
their turn. Right, yeah,
the
you need
person to push it
need
along.
a barker. So you need someone to call out, pilot skill 1. Okay, is everybody done with pilot skill 1? No, finish it up. Okay, pilot skill 2, and so on until you're done.
It's usually me.
That can really move the game along.
Yeah, I think placement's important. I think discussing placement and how to do things. Don't put your B-wings in the middle of nowhere, and then they're going to spend all game chugging along trying to get to actually be relevant to the game.
Yeah.
Placement, how you put things, think about it.
Yeah, you definitely have to consider how fast things can move in a way that you don't normally have to.
Yeah, the thing that kind of surprised at least me was how much of a swing the ships can make, the big ships, the Epic ships can make, just one direction or the other when they turn. And they're not making 90-degree turns, but even that kind of bank 2, which I think is the hardest it could turn, it actually swings the tail end around too. It's not just a straight I can and don't really touch anything. You have to keep in mind don't fly in close formation of your ship, and because you might end up cleaning one out when you swing the rear end around. And
I know
because we had some close calls, and so it's stuff like that where it takes I believe 2 full banks to make a 90-degree, but it's a very huge 90-degree. I mean, that sweep of ship is massive. So you can very easily clean your own ships out, or your opponents too, which isn't bad, but your own definitely if you're not paying attention.
Jason deployed the Raider kind of pointing towards the middle. You deployed the CR-90 totally going up the flank, and I thought he was screwed because I thought you completely out deployed him. But then, it took a while to get across the field with the big ships, and he crank and turned that thing over, and I was pretty surprised, at how he was able to actually get it to face you,
Yeah, he turned it as hard as he could into me, and I was actually going slower. Like if I had just been barreling forward, my concern, not having a ton of experience, was, am I going to be able to turn this thing and not just run it off the board? That was really my biggest fear. Was how many turns will it actually take me to go from my deployment zone straight across, and before I can actually turn? What's that distance? Having very little experience flying it on that close of a map. Normally I'm used to flying them, more of the long ways on the bigger maps, or at least somewhat diagonally across the maps. Right. I was very afraid. I'm like, okay, I know the first turn I can just gun it, but after that, do I need to start turning the school bus now to make that to keep away from that edge, or do I have another turn? And so I turned in way before I should have. If it had been with more experience, I think it would have been one of those where, oh yeah, he can turn as much as he wants. He's going to get at least 2 turns of full broadside from my big capital ship before I start turning essentially behind him. But that was that. Like I said, that was a pure lack of experience type of play on my side.
And I do think playing the epic campaigns is a good way to learn that particular ship. Like we're prepping now to play the CR90 campaign, and so we've played a few games or not, but those are usually played on a 3x3 table with, hardly a few ships, and you're really going to learn just a few aspects of, the epic ships while you're doing it. Like I remember playing with Jason, he was doing the Raider in the Raider mission, and he got way too aggressive and kind of like overshot the whole dogfight, and you're like, oh, I got to learn to do that. So I think those are good ways to learn some of the epic rules and learn how to fly the ships a bit better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. One other thing that I was going to say about epic scale games is that they're actually really good opportunities to play scenarios, because one of the main problems that you can run into in an epic game is that you can actually have these really bad traffic jams if you're flying a lot of small ships generally at each other. Then you can start having these really bad traffic jams where one ship starts bumping, and then that makes the next ship that you're moving bump, and you have just a sort of an endless chain of bumping ships. And it takes time to resolve those, and it's sort of annoying.
Train wreck.
Yeah. So it's actually good for the flow of the game if you are more spread out. But
not too spread out.
Right. I mean, the thing is that, as tactically speaking, you want to be very tightly packed. That's the better move strategically, generally, unless the other guy has a lot of assault missiles, which you can see in Epic. It is it's a pretty viable strategy to bring a few assault missiles in an Epic game. But if the other guy doesn't have that, then it's just the best idea in the world to pack your guys in about as tightly as you can and still have them be maneuverable.
I say group them in squads. Group them in squads of like 3 or 4 ships, and then fly them around.
Even beyond that, I mean, they should be flying essentially as one block. That's strategically and tactically the best decision, as far as I'm concerned.
But you don't want to play like just a giant swarm all flying near each other, flying at you. It may tactically work, but it makes a crappy game. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the problem is that I generally don't like playing a second-rate game. I don't like playing, intentionally handicapping myself so that the game, works out more smoothly. Right? And I don't think many people like doing that. You generally, it's always best. I think people like to play. Generally speaking, people like to play the best that they can play. That's the easiest setting, right? Because even if you try to handicap yourself, maybe you have to like think constantly about am I handicapping myself the right amount? Is the other guy handicapping himself? It's a whole thing.
But if you've got someone who's writing like both lists and can write a game, and you approach it that way, then you're writing these very general lists that aren't, maybe uber competitive, like the utmost, but cutthroat, but they're general lists.
Them. Because I'm talking more about how you fly the lists rather than how you build them.
I find flying them in squadrons is good. I think you give them certain tasks, like you've got the Y-wings on a torpedo run, and then you send the TIE interceptors to intercept them, and then you send the X-wings to protect the Y-wings.
I mean, that sounds great thematically, and generally speaking, maybe as it seems cool to play, but I think that if you ran your squadron like that, and I ran a solid block of, TIE fighters with Howlrunner and other, swarm-enhancing cards, I think I would probably crush you.
Well, I don't know, though, because it depends on what the objective is. And
Right, yeah, but we're not playing with objectives in a standard Epic game.
But also, you're talking about list building.
I'm saying we should play with objectives, but I'm
saying... But when you start getting into list building about swarm enhancing things in your list, that's completely different, though. So if you don't have those swarm enhancing things, but you still fly the generic list that somebody gave you,
but generally one person builds their own list. The standard isn't people playing. The standard Epic game isn't one person prepares two lists and the other guy, picks one.
Well,
the standard Epic game is everyone prepares their own lists.
Okay, but that's one of the things we talked about early on. So I don't necessarily think that Epic is awesome on its own. If you play Epic like you do a 100-point game and you're a competitive tournament player, I don't like that Epic. If your whole 300 points is meant the super best combo thing, it still is going to be a crappy game to me. I don't want to take the time to set up a whole game of 300 points, and the other guy doesn't even take an Epic ship, and everything it does is a super ultra deathly combo, because it's just more points to create more bullshit stuff. And but I think when we talk about Epic, we don't, we should exclude all that shitty stuff. All basically those people who don't fly Epic ships, who make the ultra nasty little, bugger combos. I don't want to talk about that type of a game. I think they suck. I don't want to play them, and I think we should make that distinction that when we talk about Epic, we're not talking about competitive Epic tournament games, because I hate them. I don't want to play that.
Yeah, but it's hard to say. It's hard to call the difference, right? From my perspective, it's hard to call a difference. I like to be competitive in the games that I'm playing, within the frame of the games that I'm playing. Whether that's a scenario, whether it's a standard game of X-Wing, or whether it's Epic. The problem with handicapping yourself and handicapping yourself in the way that you play and the way that you build your list is that you don't know. It's hard to handicap yourself fairly because you don't know to what extent the other guy is handicapping themselves.
Unless you talk about it with your opponent. If you go up to the guy and you say, look, Jonas flying around beside the Raider the entire game just to give him his 2 rerolls with all his secondary weapons, that's crap. Don't do it. I won't do stupid shit like that. I won't have Jan Ors and a Hawk boosting the main gun of the CR Raider to be
what combo is acceptable to you? What level of combo is acceptable?
Well, you can't.
It's hard to make that arbitrary line.
That's why you and your opponent kind of get together to talk about it, or you find one person who can write both lists. Because
I think I think that's problematic too. Fine if you have one guy writing both lists, great. And then the other one picks. Maybe that's a good way to do it.
Sure.
Right, because then you have a sort of built-in fairness in terms of what level of competitiveness you're building,
or
into
even
each list.
Input. If you build a list and someone says, I really don't like this, I want this and that, and you go, well, I'll give you this, but not that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine too. I just think that when we talk about Epic, it doesn't have to be how everyone else plays Epic, because I don't want to talk if you want to talk about competitive.
But the
Epic,
thing is that no one really
Epic
talks
shit.
about Epic.
There are some podcasts that go on, Nova Squadron and stuff. They do
Nova Squadron has one episode out of 20 where they spend 40 minutes talking about Epic.
Well, I don't want to play about competitive tournament Epic because that's just boring. And that just to me is
I think it's
I think
sort
it's
of
worse
exists, but
than
it doesn't
100
really
points.
exist.
Well, it may not exist out there. It may not have its niche, and somebody else can start that podcast. But I don't want our podcast to be that one.
Yes and no. I mean, it's a format. Do you want? I mean, the question is, are you trying to, win the game? How much are you trying to win the game that you're playing? And where do we build in this sort of aversion to the metagame competitiveness?
Right. We're basically, if you win in the list building phase, I don't like it. I don't like when you're so much about your winning is about the combos that you can pull off with the list that you've built. That to me
don't you think
is
that
where
could happen
it gets...
that could happen if you have two people who are not trying to build metagame lists, but nonetheless, build a list with some combos, because you're obviously going to build combos into your list.
Some combos are fine, but
some combos are fine to you, but maybe someone else doesn't think so.
Well, yeah, sure, but if you want to, I know there are people who like to play the ultra super mega combo competitive, and they can go listen to Nova Squadron Radio. That's fine, But that's not the type of game I like to play in X-Wing. I like to have fun, and when you've got a game where someone builds a list that just kicks your face in so nastily, and you don't even have a chance against it, that's not fun. That is not a fun game. And with Epic, the amount of time that you take to set that damn game up, I don't want to talk about those type games, because they're not fun. They suck the joy. They make people quit. They make you go, you know what? I never want to play Epic again. This was horrible.
Yeah, I mean, you should always talk to the guy that you're playing against before you play. I think that is true for any game. Any X-Wing game. You should figure out, what each of you are trying to get out of this game. You don't have to, fill out a form, but you should talk to the other guy, especially if you're either a hardcore competitive or a very casual player. If you fall somewhere in between, then you're probably fine either way.
But here's the thing.
Really have to worry. But if you're, if you are very casual and you run into a hardcore guy, then that's not going to be fun for you, and it's probably not going to be that fun for him either.
Right.
Unless you guys talk about it and then come to an understanding before the game starts.
To get to your original point, let's say you've got someone who built both lists, and one side sets it up with squads, and you've got epic ships and small base, and the other guy takes all the small base, and he runs them in a giant swarm at you.
Because it's a smart decision.
I still think that the guy with the squads can win if he plays smartly by getting his Y-wings or his torpedo boats against the capital ship and avoids the swarm, and can unload into that capital ship, and the other guy's got all his stuff all swarming around. Might be messing up with your X-wings and your A-wings, but then those 3 Y-wings come in and just rip that capital ship to pieces.
The Y-wings get chewed up by a swarm that takes them apart in 2 turns. The point I'm making here is that, in very, very general terms, it is better to have a high concentration of ships, tactically, than it is to have a spread out group of ships.
True,
for very,
but
very straightforward reasons, and I'm not really making a judgment call whether that's casually appropriate or not.
I do think with Epic it changes a bit, because you do see more things like assault missiles and capital ships.
You adapt to assault missiles and capital ships.
And I think ion torpedoes are excellent in Epic, and I think the Epic ships can be utterly devastating to a clump of fighters. You can just plow through those things.
I think a clump of fighters can also be devastating to a capital ship, though. I think I've demonstrated that a couple of times.
I do agree, but you don't have to actually fly them close together to be that clump of ships.
That's true.
To shoot
That's
up.
true. You don't necessarily have to fly them close together. Capital ships kind of bend the rules a little bit in that normally in order to concentrate your fire on a single ship, which is the point of flying in a large group, you need to fly your ships in one formation, because your target is a very small piece of real estate on the board.
Yeah.
In order to guarantee that you're going to hit it at the same time with all your ships, it's easiest to have all your ships in 1 or 2 blocks that are relatively close to each other. But a capital ship, it's large and it doesn't move very fast. And because of that, you can actually approach it from 2 different locations, completely different locations, and reliably hit it at the same time and from different angles, which is strategically or tactically important because you can then mitigate the effectiveness of their reinforce and recovery actions, which are the things that a capital ship absolutely needs to keep itself alive.
Yeah.
So, that is certainly an exception to the general rule of the more swarmy you are, the more combat effective you are.
Yeah, personally, I think ion torpedoes are amazing in Epic because you can either take a whole swarm of somebody coming at you and either they're stuck out for a turn and you can just kind of get past them, or you can ionize them and set up so one of your squads can come in and nail them, or you ionize them and then run them over.
Yeah, any sort of splash damage type thing is a lot more effective in Epic. So that goes for ion torpedoes, certainly, especially with the added element of large ships being able to run over and crush smaller ships, the huge ships, rather. But also assault missiles are certainly much more powerful. Any sort of bombs that have, an area of effect damage, like,
Seismic,
proton,
yeah,
and thermal detonators.
Yeah.
Those are all much better.
Yeah. So I think in Epic there are things you can do that are good to fly close together, but I also think comparatively in Epic there are things that hurt that as well, like the whole bumpage issue. There's the whole area of effect attacks. There's the whole capital ships plowing through you. I think when you get close together, I think you said it does bend the rules about massed ships like that. I think it's unique and different. I think it's good to keep them close together, but not necessarily that close together. And I think, to me, breaking things in squads are a way you can maneuver and create pincer moments so you capture your targets where you want them to be, but you're not as clumped as just a giant swarm. If that makes sense.
I mean, it makes sense in the context of splash damage. It makes sense in the context of huge ships like the Corvette. I don't think that it makes sense in the terms of small base ship combat. I think that one formation is generally preferable to 2 or 3 formations of ships.
True, but then if you're dealing with like 100 points on a 3x3, yes, I absolutely agree with that. But when you're dealing with like a 3x6, 300 to 400 points, and then what is your goal? It's part of it's the space, part of it is like maybe the target being the capital ship. I think there's a number of variants that change in an Epic game that really kind of bring about the overall change. There's the splash damage and such.
I think that, obviously you can expect to see more splash damage, but if you don't, then if you're going to see whether the other guy has splash damage weapons, and if he doesn't, then I don't see a ton of reasons not to fly in essentially one group.
Meh.
That's me.
I guess if you want to, I kind of see it boring. I think you can have things like a squad of X-Wings kind of come in on the flank, outside a lot of their firing arcs.
That sounds good, but X-Wings aren't good flankers.
Are you kidding?
No, yeah, I'm not. I mean, I'm totally serious. They're not good flankers.
X-Wings are great flankers.
They're not particularly fast. They're not particularly maneuverable.
I think X-Wings are plenty fast in Epic. When you've got the room to maneuver, they've got a pretty decent dial. I think X-Wings really shine in Epic, and I think you get like 3 X-Wings in the flank. Like he did that, J-Bot did, and he ripped apart my Gazanti fast with 3 X-Wings coming in flanking. And the fact that once they get into flank, they can slow roll.
Flanking a Gazanti is really something else than flanking like a normal.
Well, it was a Gazanti and 4 ties that got eaten alive by those 3 X-Wings.
Well, like the 3 X-Wing came in on the flank of the TIE fighters because the TIEs went in after the GR-75, and the X-Wings ripped up the TIE fighters on the flank and then hit the Gazanti on the flank as well. I think X-Wings in Epic, if they come in on the flank, if you've got your giant block of 12 ships going straight and 3 X-Wings come up on the flank of that, they're going to start ripping apart those ships. I've seen it.
I don't know why the TIE fighters didn't. I mean, could the TIE fighters not see the X-Wings coming? I mean, I don't get it.
Well, maybe they're going towards the Y-Wings. See, that's part of the thing is that if you've got wings, multiple wings spread out, then who do you send your swarm at? If they're kind of all going different directions, you got to pick what you're going to go after. Do you go after their capital ship? Do you go after their Y-Wings, or do you go after their X-Wings? So you've got to pick what. You can't send the swarm after everyone because they're not all.
Here's why. Here's the theory behind why one group of ships is better than three separate groups of ships. If you have one large group of ships, then you can apply all of your attacking power onto a small target. Meanwhile, if you are able to maneuver out of the general firing arcs of any of the other groups, then you're applying all of your attacking power on one target, whereas the enemy ships are maybe only applying 2/3 of their attacking power if you've managed to avoid one of those groups, which is maneuvering differently than the others.
Yes, but that's still some ifs.
If you do, yeah, you're telling me I'm putting a lot of ifs. You have X-Wings flanking. This is that's a huge if, and I can't believe that anybody could be surprised by X-Wings appearing on the flank, given how repositioning capable they are.
No, I don't think it's a surprise.
I think it's a matter.
I think it's a tactical decision.
If you get flanked by X-Wings, then you let yourself be outmaneuvered by X-Wings.
Well,
here's the
thing. Let's say you've got your 12 ships and you're going towards the capital ship, and your goal is to take your 12 ships in a swarm and march right up to the capital ship. All right, you see the X-Wings coming. So what do? Do you turn all your 12 ships towards the X-Wings at this point?
I don't know. Maybe you do. It depends very much on the situation. What if I could turn all my 12 ships towards your X-Wings and avoid your capital ship's fire, and I have 12 ships against your 3 flanking X-Wings?
Yeah, at that point, then good? it could be worth it. The thing is,
I mean, this is a lot of ifs that we're throwing back and forth, and I can't imagine this is particularly interesting. But
in Epic, I think there's a lot of maneuverability and room that you can actually do more to defeat the giant horde.
The thing is, I think it's a lot easier for you to have a favorable trade of firepower if you're flying as one group compared to the enemy's 3 groups. It's a lot easier for you to catch one of those groups off guard, focus them down, and then you've essentially removed a third of the enemy's list in a very favorable engagement, because you've thrown 2 or 3 times more attack dice than they have, and you've probably done a lot more damage than they have.
If you pull it off, then you'll nail them. Yes, but if you
I think it's easier to pull it. I think it's easier to pull that sort of thing off. It's not guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination. And if you can pull off a very effective envelopment and flank with your 3 groups, then that's obviously a favorable engagement for you. But I think that's a lot more complicated than plotting the move of one group. And I think that in order to pull off something like that envelopment with the 3 groups, I think you actually have to be a lot more predictable than you would be with that one group. Anyway, this is...
we're rambling at this point.
We're way off in the weeds at this point.
Yeah.
Get Vassal, we'll fight, and...
Vassal. I hate Vassal.
We'll see who's right.
Yeah. But, yeah. So, Epic's fun. Lots of different stuff. A lot of ways you can play differently. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then it's certainly a lot more topics to explore with in epic scale games. Because what I was saying in the first place was that I think that epic games are much more amenable and scenario friendly. Partly because you have more ships on the table. They tend to clump up in one end of the table, So you have 2 or 3 times the amount of ships that you normally have, occupying the same amount of space that you normally have.
Yeah.
And that is why you really get a lot of traffic jams. And if you have a scenario, then it's not that hard to spread that battle across the board and make people think about strategic level decisions like what forces do I commit where, when I'm building my squad, how much emphasis do I place on firepower versus speed? Because if there's objectives in different parts of the map, maybe you want to have a fast attack group that can take out an objective and then move to help out another of your groups of ships at another objective and maybe leave their pursuit in the dust. That's a totally viable strategy that you would never get in a standard game because you can't really escape the enemy.
Yes.
Truly, you can sort of try to run circles around them.
Strategic decisions come into play.
Right, and that's what I'm really after.
Yeah, and that's where I think it gets interesting. That's where I think it's good. I like it a lot. I like the strategic level where you're choosing, which ships to send after which targets, how are they going to interact as opposed to just flying at and shooting each other, and the tactic level of what combo goes with which ship to kind of better defeat the other guy in front of you. Yes.
Right.
All right, so I think J-Bot's low on power.
No, I'm just I'm trying to stay out of it since my opinion doesn't matter in that. That's 2 people who know the game better than I do. So.
Well, I think we just like to make our points and be right to the other person.
That's true. Yeah.
Can't we all just get along?
Oh, I can get along. I just know that I'm right and feels wrong.
Yes. Good.
Right.
Let the hate flow through you.
Yeah, and as soon as you give up, then we'll be fine. So we should probably wrap up, but I do want to talk about 2 things before we go. The first one is my old local game store is holding a tournament up in sort of upstate New York, Westchester area. It's going to be at the Palisades Mall in from October 7th to 9th. Sort of I think that's a Columbus Day weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. They always throw a really cool tournament. It's not, a super competitive scene. I'm sure there's going to be like 1 or 2 guys there with the top level lists and all that jazz. But generally speaking, it's not a hardcore meta scene. If you're in the area, you should check it out. The group is called Battle for Salvation, and the tournament name is the same. It's primarily a Warhammer 40k tournament, but they'll also have this X-Wing tournament event going on at the same time. So they'll have like the primary tournament the first day, and then they might have a cut on the second day, but they'll also be having a Hangar Bay tournament event. That's the type where you make 2 lists, and you can choose one when you see the other guy's lists.
That's cool.
So that's sort of a cool little format. And I'll also be running a special scenario that I've written up on that second day, assuming that I'm not busy fighting for a top place. So the scenario will be there in any case, and it'll be going. I may or may not be running it myself, but it's definitely going to be there, and that's going to be a cool little scenario. If you're in the area, you should check out Battle for Salvation. I'm going to put the link in the show notes.
Yeah.
So that's plug number 1. Plug number 2 is for the Custom Card League. So this is the league that I was running a while back with primarily on the FFG forums, where we had a lot of people submitting ideas for custom cards and working on them, refining them, and we actually have a large number of custom ships, So we have the assault gunboat that people love so much.
Assault gunboat. Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton of people out there who love the assault gunboat. If you love the assault gunboat, then you will pay attention and want to fly it in this Custom Car League tournament, which is coming up. So, because what I've done is I've taken the assault gunboat. I've also taken the TIE Avenger, Sorosub, 3000 luxury yacht, and V-wing, which were the 4 winning ships that made it into the final cut of the Custom Car League. I've taken all those ships with pilots for them. I've taken also other custom pilots for X-wings and other ships, and a whole bunch of custom upgrade cards, and I've put them all into a Vassal extension, which is sort of like an add-on file that you can download and add to your X-Wing Vassal module, and it puts those cards and those ships into your normal X-Wing Vassal program. So you can have assault gunboats in an X-Wing game, in a, for all intents, real X-Wing game, and play it with other people who are also custom card enthusiasts. Now I know that everybody likes making custom cards, and I also know that almost no one ends up playing with their custom cards. This is the opportunity to play with custom cards. It's not going to be 100% balanced. We have tried our best to make it as balanced as possible. But the other thing, the other side of that coin, is that nobody knows what is, good, essentially. So anything could be good. Nobody knows. There's no metagame. So it's, it's up to everyone to look through those cards and make cool and fun lists and try them out and play with assault gunboats. So that I have signups going on for that now, which will be going on until October 11th, and then after that point we'll start playing the tournament itself. So if any of that sounds interesting, if you've ever wanted to play an assault gunboat in X-Wing, then this is your chance. It's probably going to be your only chance. Let's be real. I don't think they're coming out with assault gunboat. So
all right.
So look out for that. That'll be in the show notes as well.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. So hopefully you'll get a lot of people signing up for that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, and the winner is going to get a custom painted ship, small base ship.
Custom.
And, I'm not such a bad painter myself, but I may even get my brother to do it. He's actually a legitimately good painter. He makes very high quality ships. So I think either way you're going to get a cool ship, but you might get a very cool ship. So
excellent.
Oh, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, cool. All right. So it sounds like a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. With that, I see we are approaching Endor. So I will turn on the fasten seatbelt lights, and the no more debating light is also lit. So put your trays back to an upright position, and we will talk to you guys next week, or talk at you. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Bye, guys.